to give myself grace. We're so hard on ourselves as individuals, but we look at someone else and we're like, you did it. You conquered that mile, even though it was hard. But when it comes to ourselves, we're like, oh my goodness, you just did a terrible job. So being your own best cheerleader and giving yourself grace and knowing that you got to start somewhere is something I wish I would have known.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by SuperCoffee, the healthy, delicious alternative to sugary coffee drinks. SuperCoffee was recently named the fastest growing food and beverage brand in America by Inc. magazine, and after tasting a bunch of their flavors, I can see why. Their coffees contain zero sugar, and many of them contain 10 grams of plant-based protein. They're growing in popularity in the running community, and I'm excited to share a special discount with you. They offer a 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you don't love it, you get your money back, no questions asked. Grab 15% online with the code FTLR, or look for them nationwide in 25,000 stores like Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS. Cheers. Welcome back. I have Sasha Wolff joining me today. Sasha, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Of course. So first question, as has become tradition, I guess, who is Sasha?
I am first and foremost a wife and mother of two, with one on the way. And I'm also a runner, mental health advocate, and a communication specialist for a furniture company nearby.
Very cool. That's all sorts of different things. And you're the founder of the Still I Run community. Is that correct?
Yep. I started Still I Run on World Mental Health Day, October 10 of 2016. So we're coming up on our 5th birthday here, which just feels wild to me because when I started the community, it was more of on a whim kind of thing. So it's so great that 5 years later, it's kind of become its own community of mental health running warriors.
For sure. So we first started talking about that after some tweets I shared a couple weeks ago, and you had challenged me on some of the things I was saying, and got me to think about it in a little bit of a different way. I think that the conversation around mental health, while it's great to have, is very nuanced, and there's so much that goes into it. I think the first part is having the conversation, and the second is having it intelligently and in an inclusive way that's proper, I guess. So talk to me about more about why is this something you care about? Let's start from there.
Yeah, for me, it's deeply personal. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety in 2003. And lo and behold, because of the stigma, I didn't really tell anyone about it. I took the medication that the doctor told me to take and then left it at that for a good number of years. I didn't even tell, really close friends. And it wasn't until 2011, so 10 years ago, that the depression and anxiety finally became too much for the medication I was taking. And I actually had to check myself into a mental health hospital, which feels brave and strange to say. The stigma had prevented me from wanting to get proper help for years. And so living in that kind of fear and in that shadow of the stigma for so long, in the suffering I did, I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. So I've kind of made it my life's mission through my work with Still I Run to defeat the stigma any way I can. And for me, I chose the lens of running because running has been so instrumental in helping me get to a better place physically and mentally. My toolkit, what I consider my toolkit, is medication, therapy, and running. So for me, I talk about it because I don't want anyone else to to feel like they have to be ashamed or hide because of an illness, really.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for sharing that background. I think the dynamic between running and mental health is fascinating. I talk to plenty of people who say, "Oh, running is my therapy," and others who um, will say, like myself included, running is therapeutic and therapy is therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's step back a little bit and set the stage with your running. So, do you remember? And then we'll get into the connection there. But do you remember your first run?
My very first run after being discharged from the hospital, it was more of a walk, trot, jog. It was very hard. I couldn't even do a mile without stopping several times. But even though it was hard, I felt empowered afterwards because I did something hard. For those of us in the running community, it feels like everybody runs. But that's not the truth. There's not very many people who do run. Like most of my coworkers think I'm wild for doing as much running as I do. So the fact that I could still get out and do something hard, like that 1 mile for my very first run, that made me feel so much better about myself. Plus, there's, obviously the physiological benefits of the serotonin in your brain being increased when you're moving. But yeah, that first run was pretty brutal.
And why did you go for the second run?
I went for the second run to prove that I can do hard things. Those of us who have been diagnosed with a mental illness, sometimes it feels like obviously the stigma makes us feel like we're less than. So I wanted to prove to myself and I guess to others that I could get out there and do this. And, I haven't stopped running for my mental health since. I've got a couple of marathons under my belt, a couple of half marathons. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
I love that. I think that the control aspect is huge. Like this is something that we choose to do. This is something we get to do. And the number of people who I was having a conversation with someone on Saturday night, and she was saying basically the same thing. Like I choose to do this. It's hard
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me feel good because I can do hard things. And then the extrapolation of like the things that you do while running make life easier and you're able to get through life um, because you can do hard things on the road and trails. I think those of us who are listening, we've come to that conclusion already probably, and it's just the reaffirmation on a regular basis that um, I forget who tweeted it, but somebody said recently, being brave does not feel good in the moment, but being brave feels good
Absolutely.
overall. And it's less about like enjoying doing something hard while it's hard and more about looking back and thinking about what you've accomplished. A little bit of a type 2 fun dynamic. Um, but I think that's why many of us love it so much.
Yeah, and I really like it from the aspect that it's a different way of looking at a running transformation. I was just talking about this the other day, but when you log on to most running outlets, websites, it's always like so and so lost, this much weight, which is great, and I love people that are able to do that. But what about focusing on the mental transformations, like the life transformations of people who have really turned their lives around because of running? Like, let's focus more on that. So that's kind of what I want to try and do with Still I Run as well.
That's awesome. What are some of the stories you've heard to that tune?
Oh my goodness. So it feels like every day in the Still I Run community, we've got a private Facebook page where people are sharing stories of having had PTSD or unfortunately sexual assault that has really affected them and given them PTSD, depression, anxiety, and these warriors just rise up out of the ashes like a phoenix, which sounds super cliche and corny, but they truly are. And they're just these amazing human beings. And I get to see these stories every day in the Still I Run community. And it's hard to pinpoint one story exactly, but we've got this amazing starting line scholarship where we help people overcome any barriers they may experience to running for mental health. And one of our recipients from last year, she was in a really tough place with an abusive ex-husband and two young children. You know, she couldn't find a place to live, and she finally was able to, and we got her into running with her kids. And she said that really helped the cohesiveness of the family at that time. And she's in such a better spot mentally and physically after coming out of that situation. So that's just one example of so many that we see.
What is it like to hear a story like that, knowing that like you caused that to happen?
Um, this is gonna sound really weird, but it I feel like I'm almost getting more out of the Still I Run community than others because I get to see these amazing transformations and I want to shout it from the rooftops. Um, Another reason why I love talking about Still I Run, but I just wish everybody could see these stories.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And it must be very gratifying to see these types of um, improvements and restarting of somebody's life.
It is, and it feels like it gives me a purpose. I think every human has their purpose, whether they realize it or not. And I realized mine in 2016 when I started Still I Run. I dislike having anxiety and depression, but if the reason for that was so that I could start Still I Run and help people in their transformation and hopefully make the world a stigma free place for my children someday, it's worth it. That's why I'm here.
Does that make your own experience struggling with mental health easier to manage?
Yes and no. When I We have a saying at Still I Run, through peaks and valleys. So when I'm on those peaks, I am riding it high. I feel so glad about everything, makes it feel easy. And then, because you can't really truly recover from depression or be cured of it, those peaks kind of hit me hard. But I'm thankful that I have the Still I Run community to lift me up when I need it.
Yeah, I think that's an important takeaway. I think that depression or not, we all go through these peaks and valleys in life. And
Mm-hmm.
much like many people, I was in one of those valleys for a long time last year. And in the moment, it was like, well, this is terrible. Like I'm very bored and lonely, and um, I don't know when this is going to end, and like that type of thing. And then, fast forward a few weeks and months, and I'm in a place I've never felt before, like from a happiness standpoint. And part of me is like, ride this high as long as it'll last, and ride this, roller coaster going up, and let it keep going up and up and up. And then the other part of me is like, and then what? Like,
Right.
when is this like joyride going to end? And so it's balancing the like being present and enjoying the high versus like it can't be like this forever. Maybe it can, who knows? But um, it's sort of balancing the um, like the highs make the lows make the highs that much higher, and the highs make the lows that much lower. But um, I don't know. I think the magnitude is of course important to consider, but I think these deviations make life interesting. And again, the highs wouldn't be as great without the climb.
Yeah, and going back to your point where you're kind of almost waiting for that other shoe to drop, like how high is this high going to go? When am I going to dip? I feel like running has helped me with being more resilient. And it's also helped me become more prepared. So, for example, when I start getting in those low valleys, I'm able to recognize it now. I'm very in tune with my body, and I attribute that to being a runner. So I know when to put my mental health toolkit into place. I know to contact my psychiatrist to talk about my medication. Let's see if anything needs tweaking there. I know and have my therapist on speed dial. Let's talk through this. And sometimes, if running is getting too stressful, I can pull it back a little bit and bring it back to a place of enjoyment. But I attribute all of that knowledge to just kind of being a runner, too.
Talk to me more about that toolkit you've referenced, and how did you gain that type of self-awareness?
Um, I wish it didn't take this, but it did take a hospitalization to realize that I needed to actually take care of myself. It is a chronic illness. It's not something that you just set it and forget it, which is what I had previously done. And when I was in the hospital, I learned that you need to regularly look at your medication because sometimes it does outgrow. Your depression will outgrow, or mental illness will outgrow the medication. That therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, is super important. And then they urged me to find a healthy habit. And that healthy habit could be anything. And for me, it was running because when I got home from the hospital, I noticed a pair of running shoes that I had neglected. And I thought, all right, I'll take my dog out for a walk. And that walk was a jog, trot, whatever you want to call it. Um, and just throughout the years, I mean, I wish I could say it was a miraculous overnight, this is my mental health toolkit. But throughout the years, I've learned that it's those three things that make up my triangle of care, if you will. And when one of those pieces falls apart, like the whole triangle does.
I like that saying, the triangle of care. Um, so talk to me more about how you're able to fit running into a healthy lifestyle and that triangle of care. I know you mentioned earlier it's one of the pillars. But at what point did it become something that you knew would be substantial enough to be worth holding on to?
I would say, again, I wish it was a miraculous, like, flip of the switch, but I would say it happened after about 4 to 5 years of running, that all the pieces together and the way I was doing it made sense. And at that time in my life, I had finally found a partner who understood my mental illness, and he made sure that I was able to carve out the time to go running. Because when we're busy, we tend to, not want to do the hard things. Running is hard, but he knows that I need to get out and get that run in. And even with two young kids and one on the way, he and I are still very adamant that I will always be able to carve out time to do this because it makes me a better wife, mother, employee, founder of Still I Run, everything.
So I mentioned earlier, like, oh, many people listening, probably agree with what we were talking about. I think this is one that there's still a lot of convincing to be done, that it's not selfish to schedule your life around something this substantial that like makes you complete and makes you a better person. Like I very much am the same way, and I schedule my runs as the you know cornerstone of the day, and I know that I'm happier, I'm more productive, I'm better to be around if I get that done. And so instead of thinking it as being selfish, that hey, I need this these 90 minutes to myself, and no, I can't meet with you at this time, and no, I can't take a phone call at this time. I think instead of looking at it as selfish, it's you're being a team player by giving yourself the tools you need to show up for everybody else, in the rest of that day.
Yeah, it took me a couple of years to realize that self-care piece. Like, where is it selfish? Where is it self-care? And for me, it's self-care because it makes me a better person. It makes me a better caretaker. It's very much like when you're on an airplane, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you
Air,
can help
what
others.
what is this airplane you're
Airplane.
talking about?
Yeah, whenever you go flying on an airplane, oh yeah, you're being sarcastic. What is an airplane? It's been so long that I've been on a plane, I didn't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. On this podcast, I've said many times, I love flying because of the reminder you get that says, please put your own mask on first before helping those around you. And I always laugh like, that's, the best metaphor possible. Like, yes, do the things that you need to do to show up for yourself so that you can be of service to others and so that you can help others. Otherwise, we're all just walking around very unsatisfied and very unhelpful, and wishing that we could be better people.
Yeah, I kind of view myself as a piggy bank almost. Like I have to make deposits into myself before I can give to others. And it's become even more apparent with having kids. Like they're exhausting. They're amazing, but they're exhausting. And I need to take care of myself first before I can be the best mom, the best wife, best whatever.
For sure. Thanks again to SuperCoffee for supporting this episode. I have been loving their French vanilla and hazelnut flavors and the cold brew cans. SuperCoffee combines the caffeine from 2 cups of coffee with protein and healthy fats to give you hours of focused energy with no jitters or crash. I love it as a strong start to the day. Receive 15% off of your purchase at drinksupercoffee.com/FTLR or use the code FTLR at checkout. I recommend trying one of their variety packs or bundles. If you give it a try, let me know what you think. And now back to our conversation. So, talk to me about your running goals. How are you focused on continuing to move forward in 2021?
So I am 20 weeks pregnant right now, which makes running difficult, but I am still running. When I was pregnant with my first two, my goal was to run a race every month of my pregnancy, which I was able to do. This year, obviously, there's not very many races in the area. So on January 1 of this year, I started a run streak where I've been doing at least 1 mile every day. And for me, that's just been huge, getting out there, making the time for myself, the self-care thing, and getting out there running. And I hope after I give birth, I can maybe squeeze in one race at the end of the year. But I'm very much into listening to my body. So we'll see. 2022 will be my comeback year.
Nice. 2022 will be everybody's comeback year.
Right? It's going to be hard to get a PR or anything because, or
It'll be hard to get a bib.
yes, that too. Yeah, I would love to run Boston someday. Would love to get PRs in every distance that I do, but I know as we get older, sometimes it gets harder. But age is just a number, right?
Exactly. Why Boston?
Oh man, I just think the fanfare around it, the historicness of the race, the city itself is legendary. I actually got into Boston last year, and it went virtual, obviously. So to be able to run the real thing in person, I feel like I just need to do that now.
Have you spectated?
I have not. I have friends that live in Boston that send me photos, and I'm just like, oh, I wish I could be down there right now. But I am actually thinking about spectating this year, even though I'll only be a couple of weeks postpartum. But I've got a couple of people I know that are running it, and I kind of just want to be there to experience a race again, even if I'm not running it.
Yeah, it's something else. I've run it twice, and my apartment is mile 24.3 on the course. So before I came out to Colorado, I would spend quite a lot of time training on the course. And the coolest thing about living in Boston and training in Boston is that every single year, once it strikes January 1st, those Newton Hills are packed with marathoners every Saturday and Sunday, and it's like people are out with tables of water and snacks and cheering, and it's just
So cool.
in rain, snow, heat, cold, all the way up through Marathon Monday.
Yeah, I feel like if you're not an elite runner, which I definitely am not, being able to run Boston is like the peak of what we can achieve.
Yeah, for sure. So fast forward. So I like to talk about a couple of topics consistently on here. One is the Boston Marathon, of course. Mental health is another, and success and growth is another. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on what does success mean to you. So switching gears entirely.
Success in terms of what? Running, still I run, life.
Yes.
um, okay, so success in running for me looks like being able to PR. I'm very competitive against myself. And still enjoying it. I don't want to put too much pressure on something that I enjoy, and that is for my mental well-being. For success and still I run, this seems very like out there, but gosh, I would love for this to be just a nationwide movement. Like it's a normal thing you do. You run for your mental health. And still I run is the community around that. I would love to get to a place where we're more nationally known, where we can give out more scholarships. Our scholarship right now helps people get into running for mental health, but it would be fantastic to get to a place where we could tie that with um, getting people mental health help. So, helping with copays, helping with paying for medication. Because I believe that money should never be a barrier for being able to run or get mental health help. Um, and then success in life, I think, is just it's gonna tie back to still I run. Like I want to be known for doing my little bit of goodness in the world, for helping make things easier for people who are struggling with a mental health disorder. I struggled for years and I absolutely hated it, and I've never felt more alone. But the more outspoken I am, the more that I talk to people, the bigger the Still I Run community gets. The more I feel like I've lived a good life. I mean I'm only 36, but like it feels like I'm living my best life right now, and to me that is success.
Do you remind yourself of that when you find yourself in a slump?
So I'm very cognizant of like being in slumps like that, and I have a journal that I write these affirmations down. And when I get in those low moments, I have to pull out that journal and read it to remind myself, because I'll just be in such a bad headspace where whatever I tell myself, I'm like, it's not true. It's not true. But seeing those words physically written out help me remember.
Is gratitude something you intentionally practice?
It is. I feel so fortunate for where I am in life after having been in the deepest of valleys in my 20s. I feel like I don't deserve a lot of the stuff that I have. So every day that I'm able to continue doing what I do, and every day I'm able to wake up and breathe, I'm absolutely thankful. And I'm thankful for everybody that's come into my life through depression and anxiety, I guess you could say.
I love that. I think gratitude is super powerful. I ran by a tree this morning that had a bunch of like written notes, and I'll show you what it looks like. But those of us um,
Oh my
who
goodness.
are listening can't see the screenshot that I just shared. But one of them was a Hamilton quote that said, look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now. And I think that, I mean, it's so simple, but it's like, yes, you have a roof over your head, you have this, you have that. And I think that no matter how hard things get, it can always come back to gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love That's such a good idea, like putting out random little notes like that.
I mean, it was wild. So I'll have to attach. I posted one of them on Instagram today, but I'll have to attach a link to the full thing. But I don't know. Maybe I can show you this. But it's a tree here in Boulder that
Oh
had
wow.
like 100 notes on it, and I couldn't tell. So the shooting happened here in Boulder 2-ish weeks ago now, and so I couldn't tell if it was related to that because there was a lot that was specific to loss and grief, and then there was a lot that was specific to happiness and joy and love. And so I was like, either the person who lived here lost someone, or this is just a really awesome person who like started something in their front yard that a whole bunch of people contributed to. And I texted two friends about this. Actually, they've both been on the podcast and they had both fantastic episodes, Karis and Tansy. And Tansy said that there's another tree here in Boulder that's like um, I forget what she said. It was like a happiness tree, or something like that, where like people just put these notes, and I hadn't seen anything like that.
There's something awesome about written word because someone has taken time out of their day to find a piece of paper and a pen and write something down. Like there's true meaning behind that. That's one thing that we do at Still I Run. We've got a run, write, fight program. So anytime anyone's feeling like they need a letter of encouragement, they can submit a request to us. And we've got a team of volunteer writers who will write you an actual note and put a stamp in an envelope and put it in the mail to you. And there's just something super gratifying knowing that you've gotten a piece of mail for yourself and someone took time out of their day to give you words of encouragement. So I love the written word.
That's super cool. So where did these ideas come from with Still I Run? How did you come up with the idea of scholarships? How did you come up with the idea of mailing people physical letters? I mean, I love that.
Is it corny to say that I come up with most of this while
On
I'm
your
running?
run.
Like, yeah, it's so true though. When I'm running, I'm just in a different headspace, and I it's like I've reached this whole other level of thinking. So I come up with most of my good ideas when I'm running, and then I'll bounce them off of my husband and be like, all right, was that just a really wild idea or is this legit? And then I've amazingly got a group of volunteers that help me out with Still I Run. And they help put a lot of these programs into place, like the writing program and the scholarships. And we're hoping to start up run chapters in June, and we've got an ambassador program. So yeah, when I'm running, I get super creative.
Very nice. So looking forward to 2022, you talked about some goals specific to running and maybe a BQ and some PRs. What will it take for you to get there?
Um, for one, pandemic will need to be done. I need
Yes,
to be able to
please.
run a race. um, I think it's just gonna take a lot of time and dedication, which I hope that I get with three little ones. I'll have three little ones under the age of 4. Um, but then also the backing of I've got so many wonderful friends and family and a wonderful husband that are behind me reaching my goals. So I'm hoping we can achieve that in 2022. And if not, there's still more time. If there's one thing that I've learned throughout COVID, it's that there's lots of time out there, and how you spend it is super important. And I want to start spending it on things that matter, like running, Still I Run, family.
So that leads into another topic I like to talk about, which is balance. Anytime I ask about this, people fall into one of two camps. One is balance is overrated and I don't strive for it. And the other is I'm balanced because of this. So which side of that hill do you think you fall in? And talk to me more about that.
I think balance is important, and it's something that I am very cognizant of because I have so many pokers in the fire that I need to. Otherwise, something will fail and something will drop. And my husband is really good at helping me with the balance because with the things that I've placed of importance in my life, so running, my family, Still I Run, in my job, like I can't let any of those fail. So I make sure to schedule things out. I live very purposefully when I can, and balance is huge and very key to living purposefully.
Talk to me more about the living purposefully aspect of it. What does that mean to you?
It means living with intention. So waking up every day and having a goal, having something that you need to accomplish and get done. I like to spend my time wisely, and sometimes there's a little bit of downtime, like vacations and stuff, but it means scheduling out time for Still I Run. It means working regular hours, 8 to 5, getting my job done. It means on the weekends making time for that long run and shutting down my computer and spending time with my family. You will not find me close to a computer on the weekends, and that's all very intentional of me because I want to live the best life that I can.
Yeah, I think that aspect of balance is huge. So when I was in Boston in living through this pandemic, I was basically just working all the time because I didn't have anything else to do. Single, living alone, blah blah blah. Like wasn't seeing anyone physically, and I was just like working all the time because like what else was I gonna do? And I would wake up on Saturday and like forget that it was like the only thing that was reminding me it was a Saturday and not a Friday was because I was eating a little bit more for a long run and running a little bit more uh, as a long run. And I got to a point where I was like, this is not sustainable. And um, now it's the same thing. It's like I close my laptop on Friday and I open it on Monday, and anything that needs to be dealt with gets dealt with. But um, you just like wake up more refreshed and ready to go. And it's the same thing in running. Like the analogy there is like you don't spend any time in the gray zone. Like you're either working hard or you're going easy. And this like coasting in between middle zone is where injuries happen, it's where burnout happens, it's where all the bad stuff happens. And so I venture to argue that the same thing is true in life when you're like spending unintentional time doing things that you don't need to be doing or aren't serving you in the right way or in the way that you're intending it to be done. That's when the bad stuff happens. That's when you're in that gray zone of I'm going too far in the wrong direction, or I'm not focused on myself enough, or recovery or rest, or these kinds of things.
Yeah, and going back to my mental health toolkit, I'm very intentional about each and every one of those pieces. And it wasn't until I was intentional that I finally felt I was in a better spot mentally and physically.
For sure. Um, yeah, I think that, but it's so hard. Like when you're in that moment, like how do you get out of that?
Sometimes for me, it's usually just a kick in the butt. Someone will say something, or all the plates I've been spinning finally drop to the ground. I wish I had some sort of like, red warning light, like warning, you're coming up on being unbalanced and not intentional. Um, so I haven't mastered the secret of that one yet.
Got it. Yeah, it's all a work in progress. So what's the way that somebody would get in touch with Still I Run or join that community? And the reason I ask
Yeah.
is a lot of the people that are listening have reached out about prior episodes that we've talked about mental health or whatnot, and everybody's looking for more resources. And there are a lot of people out there who are aware that this is a struggle, but either don't have the financial ability to see a therapist or um, that they don't have the time and they haven't made the time in the day to see a therapist or something. So if someone wants to make a change, how do they do that?
It depends on the level of change a person wants to make. So if you just need like the extra little boost, or you need a community of like-minded people, you can find us anywhere on social media. The biggest place that we're at is a private Facebook group, and we've made it private because there's still a lot of individuals out there who aren't comfortable posting about their mental health struggles so that their friends and family can see. And it's become a very safe place where people are very vulnerable and open with one another. I always find inspiration there. And then, the other piece is if you feel like you need a bigger push, if you don't have the finances to get, a decent pair of shoes or enter in the race that you want to, but you need to for your mental health, um, that's where our scholarship comes in. We've got ultra running, Wazelle, and a couple other sponsors who sponsor this scholarship. And we've got volunteer trained certified coaches who will help you from start to finish. We'll get you signed up for your race. We've got a mentor to encourage you every step of the way. We will get you prepared to hopefully make running a lifelong healthy and mental health habit. So there's a couple different ways. It just depends on how involved you want to get, and what kind of accountability and strength you need from the Still I Run community.
That's awesome. And where can we find it?
StilliRun.org.
Got it. So you mentioned you have the Facebook group, stilliRun.org, and are you on Instagram, Twitter as well?
Yep, we're on Instagram as well at Still I Run Community. We are not on Twitter just because there's so many places we can be, but we focus on the places that we're good at being in. And then hopefully COVID won't ruin this, but we do want to launch run chapters across the country. I have people reaching out on a regular basis like, hey, I'm in Houston, Texas. How can I connect with others from the community? And right now, Still I Run is mainly virtual. But the idea with these run chapters is if you feel called to do so, you can start a chapter in your area. We have a handbook. We've got a coach to help you. We'll provide you with a water and food stipend, shirts for your crew. And again, this all goes back to it being 100% free for everyone that wants to join. We never want money to be a barrier to join a running group. So hopefully we can get that up and running and have chapters all around the country.
Very cool. I think my last question is, what do you know now as a runner that you wish you knew in that first mile?
To give myself grace. We're so hard on ourselves as individuals, but we look at someone else and we're like, you did it. You conquered that mile, even though it was hard. But when it comes to ourselves, we're like, oh my goodness, you just did a terrible job. So being your own best cheerleader and giving yourself grace and knowing that you got to start somewhere is something I wish I would have known. I feel like that would have saved me so much angst in my quote unquote running career so far.
I love that. So if we want to follow along with you and your journey, where can we find you?
Yeah, I am just on Twitter and Instagram at Sasha Wolff. And I've got 2 F's in my last name because why not? And I'm also on Facebook, and I can easily be reached through the stilliRun.org website. And I'm honestly always happy when someone hears about Still I Run and reaches out and just shares their story, because it makes me feel less alone. It probably makes that person feel less alone, and it makes the world feel a little better and brighter.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for all you do for our community, and hope to see you in Boston later this year.
Hey, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you about mental health and running.
Of course, my favorite intersection. All right, we'll talk to you soon, and thanks so much.
Thanks.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.